I've been needing to find a new apartment, which has not been easy with credit as bad as mine. Luckily, I found cosigning.com. They connected me with a cosigner who helped me get my dream apartment for me and my dog. I just paid a small fee and was able to move in fast. Get the cosigner you need for the apartment you want. Check out cosigning.com today.
These protests are getting out of hand, and it's all starting to be reminiscent of the George Floyd. However, the consistency and the strength and the unknown origin of the people involved in these protests, since they're also wearing masks and they're obviously getting money from somewhere and someone taking them to certain locations, there's definitely a level of planning here that is sophisticated. Andy Ngo and Tim Pool, we're going to go over an incident that just happened in Utah where a man was shot and killed, but the person who shot him was not arrested, but someone else was detained. It's a very confusing story. I personally will do interviews like this until I'm eventually invited on one of these shows. The reason why I say eventually is because a lot of your favorite content creators they started during the lockdown. During the lockdown, we all know what everybody claimed that they were forced to do. I'm one of those very few people that never wore a mask, never took a shot, never even took a test. Therefore, there's going to be a lot of openings in this space coming up. And because of my status, I will be able to fill some of those voids in the future. So I'm basically practicing now, getting my what is it called? My water wings. And I'm learning how to do this on my own time, my own level. So, but for now, I wanted you guys to hear this story. I think it's very interesting, but it's something that's growing, and it's not a natural movement of progressive Americans. There's something else going on.
The far left riots. The No Kings protest, of course, in certain areas of the Pacific Northwest evolved into just outright riots. But we have this story of these peacekeepers who shot and killed a guy, and they arrested somebody else. This is pretty confusing. Out of Salt Lake City, can you break down what happened with that, who these people are, and why they arrested this other guy?
The story is confusing because, well, once I explain it, you'll understand why. There are a lot of Democrat and liberal media narratives at risk. We've been told now for the last couple of days that the No Kings protests that happened nationwide were peaceful, and this was a lawful demonstration against the authoritarian tendencies of President Trump. But as you mentioned a moment ago, there were some places where there were violence devolved, in Portland in particular, after the main demonstration. But in Salt Lake City, Utah, it turned deadly. Yesterday, the Salt Lake City police did a press conference detailing how a suspect had been charged with murder, and they released his name, Arturo Gamboa. And the reaction online from those who read the headlines was they thought it was potentially a Trump supporter or some right-wing maniac who brandished a rifle and killed a anti-Trump protester. But that's not what happened at all. According to the police and according to footage that has emerged, the shooting happened the shots were fired by a so-called volunteer peacekeeper. So this is a liberal demonstration. For those who don't know sort of the background, the No Kings event, it was organized by nearly 200 Democrat-aligned unions, PACs, nonprofits, activist groups, etc., all on the left. And at the protests in Salt Lake and in other cities, they did not want a large visible police presence because there's still anti-police sentiment among the mainstream left going back now for a long time because of BLM, and also because they blame police for potentially allying with federal law enforcement. So some places had their own volunteer peacekeepers, which are just left-wing liberal protesters who don a vest and have a task of maintaining peace. And a peacekeeper may have misjudged the situation because a radical leftist who came allegedly with a rifle, and you can see in the video he was holding something that looked like a rifle and did not appear to be brandishing it at anyone's, a peacekeeper fired shots in the direction of the radical Latino leftist and grazed him only, and instead killed a innocent bystander who was part of the protest. A Samoan American man died. And so the radical Latino leftists are Mr. Gamboa is the one that's been charged with murder, even though he is not accused of firing any rounds. The so-called peacekeeper has not been named at all by authorities, and it's unclear if he will be facing any charges. Salt Lake City Police is asking for people who have video or photo evidence to submit it to them in their investigation.
But so this guy they arrested, you were saying the video, he doesn't appear to be brandishing. He's not pointing it at anybody or anything like that?
In a video, which is somebody from high up on a building is panning over in the crowd, and they just happen by coincidence to catch the shooting as it's happening. And you see a person who is identified as the murder suspect, the radical leftist, running away. He's dressed all in black. He's running away. His rifle appears to be pointed at the ground, and you see a person wearing a bright vest, the alleged so-called peacekeeper, firing rounds in the direction of the Latino man, and a person standing nearby was shot dead.
This is a very, very weird story. Like, you know, I've compared this with the Kyle Rittenhouse case where he was threatened with death, he was attacked, and he fled. And only after someone fired a shot behind him did he turn around, got attacked again, shot. You know, he killed that man Rosenbaum. He tried to go to the police, was attacked again. This is a weird story where it appears you're saying there's video of what appears to be one of these liberal peacekeepers. I understand it were associated with the 5051. It's the stupidest name because you got to explain it's 50501. It appears they shot at this guy for no reason. I from everything I've read and as you're describing it now, it sounds like there's a far left Antifa guy. He's got a rifle. Some other guy points the rifle at him. So he runs, which I think a lot of people might do if they get a rifle pointed at him. And then this 50501 guy starts shooting into the crowd. Yet they didn't arrest him. They didn't call this a liberal mass shooter or anything like that. It's just, I'm quite confused as to how this is how it played out.
So it was the peacekeeper who pointed a pistol, and fired it, not
it was a pistol.
Rifle, by the way. The radical leftist is the one with the rifle, but
interesting.
He has it on him and he's running away. It pointed at the ground as he's running away. We don't know if he was brandishing it at anybody. That's not part of the allegations, and no footage has emerged of that. And to explain a bit more of the context.
I'll be honest with you, from where I'm sitting, it appears to be another instance where there is selective policing going on. We've seen it in the past where the police will basically decide that it's easier to go against the people that the mob or the majority is going against, no matter who's in the right, rather than go against the mob that might be in the wrong and try to arrest one of them knowing there's going to be a conflict. That we've seen them when they back down from BLM in, I believe it was North Carolina. There was some random black guy walking around these kids, and the white father came out and he's like, "Why are you creeping around the neighborhood? You should get off of our block." Anyway, a mass of BLM people show up the next day to this man's house he's protecting his family, and the police chose to arrest them rather than to break up and arrest the violent mob outside. It seems like the police were afraid of a direct conflict with the shooter and just went after a soft target rather than have a confrontation there where one of them might not make it home themselves. Our law enforcement can't be in fear of doing their job. That can never be the case, but that's the case right now in America and in a lot of our cities. I didn't know Utah was this bad, but apparently it is.
For people who might be confused, understandably, at a lot of these left-wing demonstrations, these radical anarchist, communist, revolutionary types, which, by the way, the social media that is alleged to belong to the Latino guy, he would have those views. They go to these demonstrations to act sort of with firearms, to act as, in their minds, a deterrent to any white supremacists or far right who might want to threaten the left-wing protesters. I can imagine a situation, because it's happened before, where these militants on the radical left who come with tactical gear, they're dressed in all black, they're wearing masks, and they're open carrying weapons. Other people who don't know who they are might misinterpret and assume that they're some type of far right MAGA threat.
You know what? I seen this in Austin. There was a drag queen. There was a drag show for kids in Austin, and I was in Austin that day, and there were, you can tell they were women pretending to be men, but they were wearing gear, they were open carrying rifles, they had masks on, they had like tactical gear on, but they were there because they're gay and they were protecting, they wanted to not have anybody disturb their groom session, all age drag show for kids. So, and none of them were arrested or anything, but it's just, I've seen this before, and they were dressed exactly like this. So I don't know if these are different groups in different cities or if they're being transported from state to state, but they're definitely being paid to do this. These were not just homegrown local people showing up wearing this gear. They were actually brought in from somewhere. I just wonder how large the network is, but we have such limited information about
them. And confront them or something. And in this case, it turned deadly. It remains to be seen if that's actually what happened, but that there's no evidence so far that the man actually charged with murder was threatening to anybody other than opening carrying, but that's lawful in the state of Utah. And for why he's been charged with murder, a lot of states in their criminal statutes on murder, it can include, if you create the conditions where somebody gets killed, you don't necessarily have to be the one who pull the trigger or stab somebody, for example, but if you create the conditions for where somebody is killed, you can be.
So what they're doing, I guess, is they're saying that the man that was arrested, even though he didn't shoot anyone, just his presence being there armed created a stressful situation, which resulted in another person shooting at him. But why isn't the shooter also being held accountable for their actions? Why, again, it's selective policing where they're picking and choosing who their targets are. That's not going to work, and it's biased. But it's like, okay, what's next? Is law enforcement in a lot of our blue cities, is it slipping away from the control of the United States? Are they going rogue? Are they going left? Well, what are they doing?
Charged.
I think what they were saying is that this Gamboa guy was in the process of committing a felony, and then someone died, so therefore it's his fault. But the question is, I don't know. I mean, we could check. Is it legal to open carry a rifle in Salt Lake City? I'd imagine it is. Maybe there's some restriction on him, or I don't know if that's come up in your investigation.
I'm not aware of any restrictions for open carrying in Salt Lake City. I might have, maybe people who are watching live can then correct me if I'm inaccurate on that. But it just shows how sort of paranoid liberals in the left are. Like, they think everybody is a Proud Boy or a white supremacist
Right.
seeking to kill them. And, you know, they've targeted a lot of people, not killed them, but violently assaulted people with just like all it needs is just like a drop of an idea that this person is somehow on the right. And then it's fair game to beat them up, rob them, or in this case, fire shots into a crowd in that direction and be reckless with it.
What do you think would have happened if the peacekeeper, they're calling him, I mean, it's kind of a ridiculous thing to say, but what if that was a uniformed police officer who fired live rounds into a crowd of No Kings protesters? How do you think the media and the liberals would be reacting?
We would get some type of reaction, maybe similar to 2020. You know, it's all about sort of convenient victims and convenient perpetrators for the radical left and liberal media. Accuracy doesn't really matter. It's about what narrative is being reinforced. So the No Kings protests is still being called peaceful when you have somebody who was shot dead. Just a
I mean, remember, it was 30 people died over the BLM riots, and people still called it peaceful. My own aunt called me and had the nerve to bring up January 6th. And I was like, well, what about, May 29th? She had no idea what I was talking about when I spoke about the actual insurrection, where they literally BLM attacked the White House, burned down the security guard tower, and St. John, I think St. Michael, St. John's Church right there as well. That was the actual insurrection. Right now, again, they're not treating these people with the same ferocity that they were treating J6 protesters or anybody else. It's like they're allowing this to happen. But this is so early in Trump's presidency. Do they want this much chaos the entire time? Because Trump's not going anywhere, and the rest of us that voted for him are here. So they're spinning their wheels, but what are they hoping is going to be the outcome? It's strange.
person who was attending, and this story sort of just swept under the rug now.
This was surprising to me. I tweeted this morning. I said something like, so a far left extremist with a rifle, freaked out some other far left extremists who then shoot into the crowd, killing a random person. So the cop arrests the extremist who was running and not the guy who was shooting. The response I got from people was, huh? I was surprised. I thought this was something everybody was going to know about. I thought this was going to be like major trending news, especially considering local media reports said that it was the group 5051, 50501. I hate their name, by the way. Had said one of our people was involved in this. We were involved in this. And they were saying things like, we had to make a very difficult decision, when this happened, and it's a tragedy, blah, blah, blah. But I think you're right when you say it's being swept under the rug and people aren't discussing this. This should be a massive story. This is, you go out peacefully at one of these events, and these are private organizations, liberal organizations, that have armed, unsanctioned individuals. These are not legally sanctioned individuals walking around with guns, trained and ready to kill if they perceive a threat. And that's exactly what happened. But I will move on a little.
I think the police realize they're trained and ready to also kill law enforcement. And that's why the police are picking their battles. But that's corruption. Knowing that certain people are above the law and other people are not, that's corruption inherently, even if it's out of fear. Out of fear, if someone's paying you, whatever, you're still letting certain people be above the law while certain people have to be under it. I don't know how that can be reconciled. I have no idea I don't think that's something that can be settled and agreed upon. I don't think we can agree to live like that.
A little bit, because you mentioned that they're still calling these protests peaceful, but I'm seeing videos, once again, out of like Seattle, Portland, and other areas where these extremists are trying to break into ICE facilities, where they're fighting with police. Can you tell us what was going on up there?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of protests that are happening, and I think people might be confused on what's what. So there's been the ongoing insurrections that first started in LA now over a week ago. And so there's already been days of violence in LA, in Portland, in Seattle. And then the No Kings protests coincided on Saturday with this sort of larger insurrection. In Portland, the rioters that were trying to burn down the local ICE facility again had their numbers bolstered by people who, once the No Kings demonstration was over, which was peaceful in Portland, then some of those people were brought over or encouraged to go to the ICE facility, where the rioters launched another very violent attack on the building and smashed open the front doors, which are glass, and with the intent to go inside to burn it down from the inside. Whoa. Because the the fires that they had set on the outside had failed to make the building catch on fire. And the building is next to a elementary.
They're trying to burn down a federal detention center for illegal. They want to burn down an ICE building, and they weren't immediately euthanized. But we are losing control of our country. This is unacceptable.
School, by the way. I've been on the ground a lot in that area, not in this particular case, but in prior years, because in 2018, when there were a lot of lies and incitement to violence against ICE at that time during the first Trump administration, remember what we were told about family separations and all the hysteria about that. Antifa, really many of the same people that are involved in violence now in Portland, violently overtook the ICE facility in Portland, attacked it, had blocked off every exit and entrance, and created a hostage situation. And there aren't very many federal officers who could.
Yeah, this is too much. This is disturbing. It seems like we're in trouble. What's the next city I wonder that they're going to hit? I pray it's not here in Phoenix. I don't think it's going to be somewhere in Texas, but it seems like Milwaukee is also one of their favorite cities where Tim Walz is, they're looking like they're going to be in trouble. The Kamala Harris out of California in trouble. So Minnesota looks like it's going to be next on the menu.
And just mobilized on an instant to go and respond. You know, they have to fly people in, drive people in. It takes a day or two to mobilize. So for hours, while staff inside were calling Portland Police 911 for help, the Portland Police declined to provide any assistance, saying that, well, this is federal property, so it's your problem.
Wow.
The response this time is a little bit different. We have a new mayor who, you know, he's woke, but he also remembers what happened to Ted Wheeler when Ted Wheeler tried to placate Antifa for many, many years. And the Portland police have responded to the rioters on the street. So at least they're doing something. They're not going on the federal property to try to restore order, but at least the crimes that are being committed immediately in front of the building, because the street is shut down and Antifa are bringing blockades and other things into the street and terrorizing this residential community, by the way. So there were 4 arrests last night. There were 3 the night before. A couple nights ago, there were 10 arrests. So we're just over 15 arrests now from 5 days of attacks on the ICE facility in Portland. And then in Seattle, it was also really violent. This was not connected to the No Kings protest, even though it fell on the same day. It was just part of the daily violence that federal property and officers and agents face now. So there's a DHS building right by Seattle in a different city called Tukwila. And so Seattle Antifa, after carrying out multiple nights of arson attacks and vandalism on the federal building downtown, they went to this DHS building and created a blockade similar to what they did in Portland.
I'm sorry, but this sounds like Chaz. There's no way this should be happening again. Since when and how? What the hell? Look, we're gonna dive into this. I got another guest that wants to get on here and talk about this with me in a few hours. So like and subscribe, share this video. I'll be back shortly. We're gonna bring somebody else on. Okay. Thank you.
I've been needing to find a new apartment, which has not been easy with credit as bad as mine. Luckily, I found cosigning.com. They connected me with a cosigner who helped me get my dream apartment for me and my dog. I just paid a small fee and was able to move in fast. Get the cosigner you need for the apartment you want. Check out cosigning.com today.